Welcome to my review of Go Mecha Ball for the Series X. This is also on PC, and it took me around 10 hours and 38 minutes to beat. And after I completed this, I also completed the PC version to get another kill in for the kill list, so I can confirm that both versions are pretty much identical. If you have this on Game Pass, you can also play it on PC as well. And your saves will carry over from the Xbox version. So all my updates, like all the little upgrades I had and weapons and shit carried over to that version as well. So I beat that version much, much faster. So you can unlock more difficulty settings once you beat the game. But initially the goal is you have to complete 4 worlds. And at the end of each world is a boss fight. So you got to kill 4 bosses. And you got to beat 12 stages in total. Because I believe there's 3 stages in each world. And each one is a different layout and theme with some new enemies. The game is kind of like a mix between something like Marble Madness and a twin-stick shooter. So most of the time you want to roll around and ram shit while you're in ball form. And you can also, bust up in the air and stomp down on enemies, bounce off enemies and things like that. And you also have your guns. But when you're using your guns, you move much slower. You're in a walking form and you move much, much slower. So the game really encourages you to really stay in ball form for most of the game. But, sometimes you will come out briefly to fire off some shots. But it does leave you more vulnerable. So it's usually better just to keep rolling, keep moving. And while you're doing that, you're going to pick up, you can hold up to 2 different weapons that you can swap between. You'll unlock more weapons as you fail runs. You'll have currency you can use for permanent upgrades between runs that you can use in future runs. You only have 1 life to beat the 4 worlds, so you have to do it in 1 run. That's why it took me over 10 hours to beat. It can be tough. You also have, I believe, 4 different balls that you can control that you can play as. But you start off with just 1, but you can unlock more in the shop between worlds. There's a little shop. After you beat a stage, you get to pick what upgrade you want for that run. It's only permanent for that run. Once you fail the run, you start back from scratch again. But you have certain upgrades and things that carry over, such as, if you unlock upgrades, then they will become, they'll be in the dice roll. They can become available during your run, pretty much. You don't start with any base stats that you can upgrade. There's no permanent upgrades that you start with, but the closest thing to that is that, if you unlock a different ball to play as, it has different beginning stats. So they're all a little bit different, which may suit your playstyle better. Certain ones may be better for certain playstyle. Like some may do more ram damage or more gun damage, but at the cost of less health. So there's little trade-offs like that. I ended up beating the game with the first ball you start with is what I ended up liking. Because once I unlocked the weapons and shit that I liked and the upgrades, I liked the extra health of the original character. And it has pretty good gun damage and ram damage. On these shops, you can pick what you want to buy for your run, which can help you for the boss fight. Because right before the shop, you will fight a boss. It's pretty much, once you get to the shop level, you're going right into the boss fight. And sometimes you won't get any health back. The game is pretty stingy with health. So, if you don't get health available in the shop, it's very hard to get health back. Now, with this first character, he has a small chance of regaining some health if you kill somebody with a ram. So that is a nice perk of this character, but it's also very infrequent that you'll get that health back. So you pretty much, you have to do pretty well because the game doesn't give you a lot of health back. You do get health back when you kill, a boss of a world. You'll get most of your health back for that. Also in the shop. So once you do get to a boss, you go through this little course here where you can't die. It's just a little obstacle course. And then you'll fight the boss of the world. So this boss can be a little tricky because he stays up in the air most of the time, but it's actually one of the easier bosses. But boss fights kind of play out like this, where you just roll around, try to avoid the boss's attacks, you fire off your shots, you try to bounce on the boss, if you can. Now, most boss fights you can't get airborne like this. I think this is one of the only ones where you can actually get airborne and bounce off the boss, but this is pretty much how boss fights are. You avoid attacks and fire back at the boss. This boss has a lot of minions, as do all the bosses. You get different abilities, too, that you unlock. Like, you can choose from different abilities. You start off with no abilities, but you can hold up to 2. And the missile swarm is an awesome one that you'll get later. But the abilities are great because they can really change up how your play style is. And you can do some great combos in the game. Like my main combo usually is I like to ram the enemy and then fire off a shotgun blast immediately. After I get the shotgun. And that's a great way to kill enemies quickly or damage them heavily. You can also do where you bounce off the enemy twice, come down, ram the enemy, then fire off a blast, which is that's a nice 4-hit combo that does a lot of damage. If you want to take it even farther, you can add abilities into the mix and use both of your abilities after that 4-hit combo. So that's like 6-hit combo, and the abilities do massive damage. That wipes out, that will wipe out enemies. So the abilities are quite different from each other, and they add a lot of variety. You get things like health upgrades for the run as well, where you can get your health up. There was an ability, or it's an upgrade I unlocked called Glass Cannon, which it means you do double damage with all your attacks, which is great, but it gives you half health. And since health is kind of scarce in the game already, it can be tough, with such low health. But it is an option, and it could be an interesting way to play. So this is the final boss. And it has a few phases as far as you have to take out these shield generators. And then you can damage the boss. But yeah, once you beat the game, you will unlock the ability to raise the difficulty another notch. And I think you can unlock multiple difficulty notches as you beat the game multiple times. So there's some replay with that. And I still didn't unlock nearly all the enemies. The upgrades and weapons, I didn't unlock nearly all of them. And that was in 10.5 hours of playing. I might have half of the stuff unlocked. So there's a lot of weapons to unlock, and there's a lot of abilities and things to fuck around with. One that I got recently was a turret, which works great. Really shreds the bosses. So, there's a lot of different abilities and things that you can unlock. And like I said, even after 10.5 hours, there was still a lot of shit left for me to unlock. It might take me 20 hours to unlock everything. I'm not even sure. Because it seemed like I was only about halfway through the unlocks. So, you got all those weapons you can unlock and the extra difficulty settings. And I believe there's also some random nature to the way the game plays out each time. Like the enemy arrangements and things might be somewhat randomized. The stage layouts always seem to be the same. But the enemies you get on each wave may be randomized. I'm not sure. But that didn't really make that much of a difference to me because you're getting the same enemy types. They're just remixed in different ways potentially. So it doesn't make that much of a difference. But what does make a difference is you get different items. After you beat each stage, you get different items show up, different upgrades, different weapons that you find on the course. And there's different things in the shop. So that really changes how your runs play out. But eventually, it can be a little hard at first to get a feel for the depth perception. As far as like when you're trying to bounce off enemies and navigate the environment. Because some stages are more platforming based where you got to use fans to get in the air and then you have to land on small platforms. So you do have to get good with the depth perception as far as knowing where your ball is going to land. And you can use the shadow of your ball when it's in the air to see where you're going to land, but it does take some practice to get good at that. But once everything, starts to click, the game flows really smoothly. So for me, this game's an 8 out of 10. I thought it was great. It's also free on Game Pass. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.